All right, good afternoon again, everyone. I am Michaela Peck from the Office of Distance Learning, and welcome to part two of our Turnitin training. So I'm not sure if everyone who is on board today visited or was able to attend last week's session, Turnitin part one. So last week we looked at setting up Turnitin within your own Moodle course. We looked at configuring settings based on preference. Is everybody able to hear me? If you can hear me, can you just put a yes in the chat if you're able to hear me clearly? Before I continue, just put a yes in the chat, or you can just quickly activate your mic to say okay. Thank you, Mr. Parks, for that. Everybody else able to hear me?
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right. Okay. Right. So last week we looked at setting up Turnitin within a Moodle course. We looked at configuring the Turnitin activity settings based on your preference. We looked at evaluating the similarity report that is generated by Turnitin, and we also looked at using the feedback studio for assessment. So this is using like quick marks, which are pre-existing comments in Turnitin for assessing students' work. We looked at leaving voice comments and just general comments. And if you were here as well last week, you would have heard about what Turnitin is. It is really a web-based similarity detection tool, and it is used to compare students' work with what is in Turnitin's repository, or what we call Turnitin's database. And of course, this is done to detect similarity between what is in their database and students' work, students' assignment. I mentioned as well last week that this is very important because it helps to promote academic integrity, and the system, as I mentioned, has a feedback studio and other features contained to streamline grading and feedback and for improving student outcomes. Last week, I also shared what the handbook has to say about plagiarism, and of course, the handbook is accessible to students and staff alike. It can be found on the university's official website at utech.edu.jm. And I had also shared a document on the university's testing and assessment policy, which also defines what plagiarism is in reference to what is in the student's handbook. And it also mentions that a minimum of 20% of similarity detected in a student's work is acceptable. And I mentioned that even though the 20% is acceptable, we should encourage and remind students that plagiarism in no form is acceptable, and we should share with them ways in which they can mitigate this. All right. I looked at as well the Turnitin module that we have. We have a test Turnitin module. Towards the end of today's session, I will go over that just in terms of how you can locate it as a lecturer. It's the very same way that the student would locate it. And this is a test Turnitin module that can be used by anybody at the university. Once you're able to log into Moodle as a lecturer, if it is that you're doing your doctorate or further studies, you can upload your personal papers for testing, right? And students as well can use this to submit their draft work before making their final submission to you as the lecturer. All right. So I'm going to start now by sharing my screen. And of course, as is typical, we use the Moodle demonstration course whenever it is that we are doing trainings, workshops. That's the course that we use. All right. So I'm going to go ahead now and share my entire screen. During the session, if you have any questions at all, okay, so my connection is poor. Okay, I hope that doesn't maintain. All right, so you should be seeing my screen. I was mentioning if you have any questions at all, you can raise your hand and I'll check back in the session to look at the hand being raised or hands being raised. Or if you prefer to use the chat, you can leave any questions or concerns that you have there. Okay. So what I'm repeating from last week's training, which is basically necessary just to have us on the same path, is how to set up the TurnItIn activity. All right. Today's training will essentially focus on how you can create or upload a rubric within TurnItIn for assessing your students' work. So of course, with the rubric, you can define scales and criteria to evaluate the students' work, which basically makes it easier for you. And why it makes it easier is that once you append this rubric that you have uploaded or created in the TurnItIn Feedback Studio, once you have it affixed or appended rather to the assignment, you don't have to keep uploading the same rubric to grade 100 students. It's just there, and you just click on the student's name and you can do the assessment. So that is what today is going to focus on. But before we do that, I have to show you how to create the TurnItIn activity. If you weren't at last week's training, no issues. You can leave your email address in the chat and I'll send a recording of last week's training to you. All right, so I'm here in my Moodle demonstration course. Just think of it like your very own course. And remember that in order to make any course changes, we have to turn it in on. And the button can be found top right of our Moodle page. Good. So I'm going to click on that, and that will enable me the access now to add the TurnItIn activity. So once I click on that, I scroll to the bottom of my screen. Click on add an activity or resource. Good. And I'm going to click on activities, and TurnItIn is right here. So I'm going to click on that once. And this screen now loads an electronic form for me to fill out. So I'm going to give the assignment a name. So let us call this Moodle demonstration TurnItIn assignment. Good. And I mentioned last week that in the summary box, it's good to give a description to students just to let them know that this is a drop box for them to upload their assignments for testing in TurnItIn, right? We want to make that clear to them because we have two assignment types in Moodle. We have the regular assignment feature, and we also have the TurnItIn assignment. The TurnItIn assignment, of course, is the one that allows us to check for similarity in students' work. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to look at is the submission type. Good. With this feature, it's asking you, how do you want students to submit? Do you want it to be where they upload a file? This can be like a PDF or a Word document. Or do you want them to do a text submission where they type in their assignment or where they copy and paste? Any submission type means that you're giving them the option of both. All right, so I'm going to select file upload. The next option looks at number of parts. So we can have as much as 5 parts and as little as 1 part. Okay, now the number of parts, let's say you have an assignment that has, but you want students rather to submit their paper for this assignment in sections. Let's say you want them to submit the introduction first, and then you want them to submit the body and then the conclusion. You can select multiple parts to facilitate this. All right, so let's say I selected 5 parts here. I'm just gonna jump down quickly to the bottom and show you that you would need to set start date, due date, and post date for all parts. Okay, and you can rename the parts so students won't be confused. But I'm gonna select for the purpose of this demonstration 1 part. All right, just quickly check in the chat. All right, so this is for the recording. Can students submit PowerPoint in TurnItIn? Yes, they can. Yes, they can. Good question. All right. Okay, so number of parts 1, and we are not gonna highlight or select the maximum file size since 101 MB, since 100 megabytes is the site upload limit. Per student's assignment, we're gonna let it stay as is. Good. Are we allowing for the submission of any file type? I'm going to select no, and that is there by default. Kindly note that TurnItIn does not check for similarity on images, with images. So it's only text. It has to be purely text based. So if you upload a table, but the table is in an image format, it won't be able to check that for similarity at all. So it has to be text-based content. Good? Okay. Our next option here says, do you want to display the similarity report to students? This is important. This is how they will know what Turnitin has generated and the amount of similarity detected and the details as it relates to Turnitin's markup on the assignment. So yes, we would want to display the similarity report to students. If this is set to no, the students will not be privy to that report. All right, so grade display, we're not going to change this. This is, preferential. So if you prefer for it to be 80, if you prefer for it to show as percentage or to be shown as a fraction, that is the student's grade, then you can change that. But that is something that is very minor. So I'm not going to change that. And I'm not going to change the auto refresh for grades and scores. What this is saying, though, I'll tell you, is let's say you have made a change in the Turnitin assignment, a change in terms of a configuration change. It wants to know if you want the system to automatically refresh the grades or if you want to refresh the grades for yourself. All right. Okay. All right, so let us move down to grade. All right. So this is an option as well that I would not change. Do you want the grade type to be scale or point? Really up to you. And then of course in this section here you can put the maximum grade. The maximum grade by default is 100, which means that, and this is not marks. This is the maximum grade. So this basically means that if you're giving the student a score, it's going to be out of the maximum grade, which is 100. Okay, so if they get 4 out of 5, let's say 5 is the maximum points they can get. If they get 4 out of 5, that is 80%, so it's going to be 80 out of 100. All right, let's move down to grade to pass. You can enter grade to pass here. If you put 60% and the student gets below the 60%, this basically means that the system will show them or display to them that they have not passed or they have failed this assignment. All right. Now, remember earlier we had selected the amount of parts we want for the assignment, and I had mentioned that any amount of parts you select, you have to also set start, due, and post date for those parts, as well as you can rename the parts. I'm going to say this is the essay introduction. Introduction. Good. And now we are going to enter the different dates. The start date is when the assignment is open. So this basically means that at this date and time, students can upload their assignments to Turnitin. So by default, it is set at today's date. All right, and this says 2:16, so we're going to let that stay as is. Moodle uses a 24-hour clock, so 1400 hours would be 2 o'clock. Okay, and then the due date now is typically set for 7 days after the start date. So here we have it as the 17th of February at the same time. All right, and due date means the students have to submit by or before that time. All right, and the post date, this indicates to us that the lecturer would be able to, or the system rather, would be able to release or post the grades to the students on this day. So let us say a student has submitted tomorrow and we mark their assignments tomorrow. They won't be able to see their grade until what is specified on the post date has come. So if it is the 18th, they won't be able to see their grades released to them or the feedback released to them until the 18th. All right. Do we have any questions thus far? All right. So if we have no questions, I'm just going to continue. Okay. All right. So let's move down now to similarity report options. So here it says, do you want to allow submissions after the first due date? Sorry, that's after the due date because there's one due date. All right. So the option is up to you. Do you want students to be able to upload their assignment after the due date? System has default as no. I'm going to put that let that stay as is. All right, so we're not allowing submissions after the due date. Report generation speed. There are three options here. The first one, TurnItIn will generate a report immediately, but students cannot resubmit their assignment. The second one, TurnItIn will generate the report immediately, but students can resubmit up until the due date. However, after 3 resubmissions, reports generate after 24 hours. And the third option, TurnItIn will generate the report on the due date, and students can resubmit until the due date. All right. The most widely used option is option 2. The student receives the report immediately and they can resubmit until the due date, but after 3 resubmissions, the report will start generating after 24 hours. Okay. Our next option, this is asking us, do we want to store the student's paper? No repository means that you're not storing the student's paper, and this is in TurnItIn's database, right? And standard repository means, yes, the student's paper will be stored in TurnItIn's database. Now, let me explain this option. If you don't store your student's paper, this means that other papers will not be checked against your student's paper. If the student's paper is stored in TurnItIn's database, this means that other students' paper, and this is not just at the University of Technology. Remember that TurnItIn is used widely, internationally, all over, right? So this allows our students' papers to be tested against other stored students' papers. All right. So remember, if the paper is not stored, it cannot be checked against other students' papers. When do you not store students' papers? So you use the no repository option whenever students are submitting to TurnItIn, let's say for draft purposes, and you just want them to check their assignment against what already exists in TurnItIn's database. Why I'm saying for draft submissions is because let's say you have it where students are submitting their draft submissions and you're allowing TurnItIn to store. If they re-upload their final submission, more than likely they'll get 100% similarity because the paper in its entirety was already uploaded and stored within TurnItIn. All right, let me give an instance as well of when we do not store students' paper, another instance. So in the test TurnItIn module, we have the option disabled. So it doesn't store the papers of the students. All right, it doesn't store their paper at all. So if they upload the same paper with changes and tweaks 10 times, similarity will not be detected against their own paper. All right, so I'm going to put standard repository here and let's move down. Do you want to check against stored students' paper? And this is different from the option that I just explained. If you're checking against stored students' paper, this doesn't mean that you're saving your students' paper. This means that TurnItIn is checking your students' paper against what exists in their database. And this is very important because this is TurnItIn checking other students' assignment and the other options you would see. Do you want to check against the internet, third-party sources like journals, periodicals, and publications? We're going to have all of these set to yes. Very important. This is the whole reason or the whole point of us checking the students' paper, running it through TurnItIn, because we want to see if similarity will be detected. All right, so we have yes for check against stored student papers, yes for check against the internet, yes to check against other third-party sources. All right, now we have another option here, exclude bibliography. So this means that the section in the student's paper with the references, it's asking you, do you want to exclude that from being checked? If you don't want to exclude it, it will be checked. All right. I had put no for both and quoted material. Anything that is in quote or anything that is indented, we're saying no, it will not be checked. So I fully went through this last week and I had explained the reason for setting no, which means that I'm excluding it from being checked. All right, so if it is that you want to exclude the bibliography from being checked for similarity, you have to, or let's say rather, let's say you want TurnItIn, let's put it all the way, let's say you want TurnItIn to check the students' bibliography and the quoted material. TurnItIn is going to return all of this as similarity being detected, even though the student has proper citation, as I'm correct to use the APA 7th edition for citation. It's still going to come up. Remember that TurnItIn is not a human being, and even though they would call it artificial intelligence and it is a smart software, remember that as a human being, you have to eyeball the student's assignment thoroughly, because everything that is bring up as similarity is not necessarily plagiarism, right? Human effort is very much important in the entire process. So if I'm excluding the bibliography from being checked, or if I'm including it, I have to, or I can rather, go back into TurnItIn, which I'm going to demonstrate shortly. You can go back into TurnItIn and you can modify the options without coming back here. You can modify the options to not exclude or to exclude, and you'll realize as well, if you include the bibliography and quoted material as the sections of the paper being checked for plagiarism, you'll realize that the similarity index is going to be higher. Right? And when you exclude it from being checked, you'll realize that the similarity index will be lower. All right. Small matches, this is another thing, and it's very important. When we are excluding small matches, we normally tell lecturers 10 to 15 words. Small matches are words that occur in the same order. So similar words, or the same words rather, that occur back to back to back in the same order. So for example, a student's cover page, students from the same faculty and from the same school, on their cover page, they would have University of Technology Jamaica, Faculty of Engineering and Computing, School of Computing and Information Technology, just about 13 to 15 words. All students who have that in their assignment on their cover page, these students doesn't mean that they're plagiarizing, right? So what this system allows us to do is to exclude small matches. So if I put 15 words here, the same 15 words that occur back to back to back in multiple students' assignment will not be detected as them having plagiarized. You will also, however, see the option of percent. We don't use the percentage option because we find it not to be as accurate. So we say 15 words. And the last three options explained to you just now, these are options that you can modify while you're assessing your students' assignments. I'll show you that shortly, but these last three options can be changed. Once I save this assignment now, we can change these options here. The check against other students' papers, against the internet, and against the third-party sources. But these last three options can be changed. All right, so I pause again to ask if we have any questions. Is everything clear to us thus far? All right, so no questions, I'll continue. Okay, let's move down to grade mark options. So this is what we did not look at last week, which we're going to look at this week. So here it says you can attach a rubric to this assignment. And I clicked on the drop down and it shows me multiple rubrics. These are all rubrics I, Michaela Peck, have uploaded. Right, these are rubrics that I would have uploaded, or rubrics that exist within this course, my course. So if you're in a course and you're co-lecturing, you would be able to see the rubrics of other lecturers who have uploaded rubrics to the same course that you are in. Okay, now I'm not going to click this option to launch the rubric manager from this end. All right, I'm going to actually save the assignment and go in and show you how you can access this option. So once we have all the fields I just went through, once they are filled in, all right, I can scroll all the way to the bottom of the screen and I'm going to click on save and return to course. And that's basically how you create the Turnitin activity for your students to upload to it. All right, so this is what it looks like. Students will just click on it to access it. Okay, so last week I had used these two drop boxes just to demonstrate the creation and assessing the students' work. I have a student's assignment, a dummy student's assignment uploaded to this TurnItIn Dropbox. I'm going to click on it. Okay, and this assignment actually has multiple parts. That's how I created it. So it has part 1, part 2, and part 3. All right, now under part 2, there is a dummy user. Okay, so it's showing 2 students, but the dummy user uploaded an assignment, and 27% of similarity was actually indicated in the students' work. All right, and we can see that there because it's clear. Before we even open the report, it shows both the student and it shows the lecturer of the course or lecturers, the percentage of plagiarism that is detected. All right, so that is there. Okay, so all right, I think I hear the chat going off. Okay, so persons are requesting the okay. All right. Right. Before we click on the assignment, I wanted to mention to us what the different color codes mean. So I had explained it last week, but I'll just go back through it quickly. The different color codes for similarity. So the color of the report icon here can actually indicate the similarity score that is received for that particular paper. Right? And of course, this is based on the amount of matching or similar text that was found. So the percentage range used is from 0% to 100%. And in terms of the colors, blue indicates that there's no matching text. Green indicates 1 word to 24 or 1% to 24% matching text. Yellow, which is what we're seeing here, indicates 25 to 49% matching text. Orange indicates 50 to 74% matching text, and red, of course, is the worst zone, and that is 75 to 100% matching text. All right. So I know you probably won't remember. In the previous training, I had an image with it up. So when you're going through the recording, you'll be able to screen grab or to just pause it and just document it on your phone or wherever. All right, so let's now click on the assignment, and I'm going to take the hand that was just raised. Mrs. Headley Smith, you can go ahead. You can unmute and go ahead.
Good afternoon, Miss Peck. I kind of strayed a little because I'm not seeing your screen very well. It's very blurry. So I basically opened up mine so I can follow. But I missed the step, and I'm not sure what page you're on now. So what
Okay.
heading did you go to get here?
So I just clicked on the assignment after I created it. Thanks for mentioning the blurry screen. Is anybody else having that issue? Does my screen appear to be blurry to anybody else? If so, just let me know. If not, then you don't have to respond.
So I was actually at the grade mark option when you were discussing rubrics. And by the time I found my page, I kind of lost it.
Okay, Dr. Williams is saying yes as well. Anybody else seen my screen has been blurry? So Mrs. Headley, what I had done, I had just save and return to course after the grade mark option, right? So when I saved and returned to course, I just clicked back on it and it took me here.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Okay. All right, so 2 persons have indicated that my screen is blurry. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna stop sharing and restart sharing in a second. All right, so I have stopped sharing just to know. Okay, and I'm trying to restart sharing now. Share application, share now. All right, so you should be able to see my screen now. Is it any better for you, Dr. Williams and Mrs. Headley Smith?
No, it looks the same to me.
All right, somebody said, hold on. Yeah, Dr. Barrow said she's zooming, so she was able to see my screen clearly. All right, so a point of notice to everyone, top left of the option of the top left, sorry, show view controls, you can actually click on the magnifying glass to zoom in. So you see it allows me to zoom all the way in. But I'm going to zoom back out because I have to be careful about how I use the option. But for you, when I'm on this screen here, if you need to zoom in, just click top left of your screen, show view controls, and the magnifying glass with the plus inside of it allows for zoom in, but don't zoom in too much. All right. Okay, so I'm going to continue. Part 2 actually has student assignment. So I was saying I was going to click on it. So to find the originality, rather to find the similarity report that TurnItIn has generated, I can either click on the 27% here. Oops, I'm not sure what happened. I can either click on the 20%, 27% here, or I can click on the assignment name. All right, and this will now open TurnItIn's Feedback Studio. Okay, and it is showing us the student's original assignment. And if I click on the 27%, it shows us TurnItIn's markup. All right, and we went through all of that last week. But what I want to show you before we look at the rubric, you'll realize that the reference, it was excluded. All right, so if I click here on filters and settings, all right, you would see the same options. This is what I was referring to. So the quotes are excluded from being checked, bibliography is excluded from being checked. All right, if they were included, you'll see them being highlighted because many other sources on the internet would have used the same reference. Okay, and it would have been written the same way if they were observed in the APA 7th edition format. All right, if I decided to exclude the bibliography, so I'm going to tick this, or untick it rather, and I click on apply changes, you would realize now that the originality or the similarity report and the index went high, went to 44%, and it actually highlighted these as similarity being detected, the entire reference sheet, or most of it, right? So I was saying this to say that this does not indicate that the student is plagiarizing. The system is checking their references, and if you disable this feature, this will lower the similarity index. Okay, all right. Okay, all right, so I am going to move on now to what we are here for, all right, because everything else would have been explained and discussed in detail last week. Rubrics. How can we actually activate the rubric option? So let's say I have a rubric already, or I want to create a rubric for this assignment for probably 50 or hundreds of students. How do I actually go about doing this? Using rubric for assessment. Okay, so last week we explored the feedback studio. We looked at the quick marks, we looked at leaving the feedback, using the general comments and the voice comments. We didn't look at rubric or the rubric manager. If I click on the option that says rubric, it will tell me no rubric or grading form is attached to this assignment. So I had mentioned to you earlier, or defined rather, what a rubric is. Turnitin has two assessment options in this regard. There's a rubric and a grading form. What's the difference between them? So you will see shortly, but based on my understanding, the rubric is used to evaluate the students' work based on criteria and scales that you have defined, and the grading forms appear to be a bit simpler to me. The grading forms, they are used to provide free-form feedback and scores, which are used to evaluate students' work based on defined criteria. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to show us how we can create a rubric. And I already have a rubric. Let's say I already have your rubric. Let me just close this one. Let's say you already have a rubric, but you want to input it within TurnItIn. So the first thing is that I would not be able to upload this rubric like this. All right, because it only accepts rubrics that are in Excel format. But what I can do, I could copy and paste the different areas within TurnItIn. All right, so to do this, I click on the gear icon. When I hover, it says manage rubrics and grading forms. All right, and a rubric might pop up because the system has pre-existing rubrics, but you can create your own. To create your own, you click top left on the 3 lines and we click on create new rubric. You see the option to create new grading form or to upload. Let's first look at creating a new rubric. All right. Now there are 3 types of rubrics. We have the standard, which allows you to enter scale values for each column and weight criteria rows using percentages. We have qualitative rubric, which provides standard feedback without numeric scoring. And we have the custom. You can input any value into any of the rubric cells. Okay, so I'm going to select custom since it's the most flexible rubric type. All right, and once we have selected a rubric type, we want to give the rubric a name. So I'm going to call this one demo rubric. Let's just call it that, or live demo rubric for the purpose of this training session. All right, and then we have to now give the criteria names and the scales names. So just follow with me as I copy and paste from my rubric that I have. The first criteria here is introduction. So where it says criterion, I'm just going to paste introduction, and below introduction I'm going to enter 5 points. All right, our next criteria is organization. All right, so I'm going to paste the word organization, and for this one it is 10 points. The next one is oral communication. So I am not allowed to type out oral communication because it's too long. So I'm going to put oral, COMM dot. All right, and I believe that one is 15 points. All right, by default, the system generates 4 criteria rows or cells rather for us, but I'm going to delete the 4th one because I'm not using it. So to delete it, I simply hover and click on the bin and click on yes. All right, so thus far we have the 3 criteria listed and the points assigned to each. Now for the scales. The first scale here says excellent. We have excellent, good, satisfactory, unsatisfactory. So I'm going to enter those. All right, so in scale 1, excellent, good, satisfactory, and the system only auto generates 3 scales for me, so I have to add the other one. To add it, I would simply click on the plus top right of the screen. All right, and then now I can enter the value here, which is on satisfactory. All right, so we have all the scales listed. Now next, we are going to enter the different, how you call these now? These are the different comments. So what makes the introduction excellent, good, satisfactory, unsatisfactory? The different comments related to the criteria and the scales defined. That is what that is. All right, so I am going to copy and paste, and you would realize as well that there are some number, the values here for numbers to be entered, and that's the points for each. But let's go ahead and copy and paste the comments first. All right, so these define how the students are being assessed. Unsatisfactory. Okay, and then we're gonna do the same for organization. We just copying and pasting. All right. And remember, if you don't have a rubric and prefer to create one and type up everything in the feedback studio, then you can do that. And then finally, for oral communication, let's add these as well. Okay, let's check to see if the points were added for this one. Okay. All right. Now let's go ahead and enter the different points. This is very important because this is what will let students know how much points they have gotten for each criteria. All right. So back up to excellence. So it's 5, 4, 3, 2. 5 here, 4 here, 3, and then 2. And then now for organization, it's 10, 8, 6, 5. Good. And then for oral communication, we have 15, 12, 9, 7. Mm-hmm. All right. And we have our rubric created here. Excellent. So what we need to do is to save it. Very important. Remember, once you create a rubric and save it, you can have it up until forever until you actually manually delete it. All right, so I'm going to click on save, and then I'm going to attach it to the assignment. To do that, there is a little switch at the bottom left of my screen. It says attach the assignment. It is off. So if I click to turn it on, it is now attached to my assignment. To now use it, or attach to the student assignment. To now use this, I'm going to click on close, and I can see the rubric here, and the marks, or the points rather, is 30 because we had 5, 10, and 15. All right. However, the maximum score for the assignment is 100 because that is what we had set it at. All right. So how are we going to now use this rubric? It's easy because after we have created the rubric, it appears to us in a slider format. So I can slide, let's say the student has done very good, the introduction is very good or excellent. When I slide it to 5, it shows that the scale says excellent, all right? And the criteria, it shows the introduction, all right? And it shows that the student introduced themselves. So the student will be able to see what the scale is saying. Introduce themselves, establish rapport with audience, and explain the goal of the internship in a clear way. Let's say for organization, I'm giving the student unsatisfactory. They'll be able to read and see why they have gotten unsatisfactory. Here it says the student, hold on, let me just click back on it. My screen is kind of small. Right, presentation showed a lack of understanding of goals and objectives, and it goes on. All right, let's say oral communication, I want to give the student good. They'll be able to see why they received good, communicates ideas, thoughts, or responses in an interesting manner, keeps the attention of the audience, and it goes on. All right, so I don't think you are limited as to the amount of criteria you can add. All right, but the students will be able to see a description, so it won't just be that their introduction was excellent and that is it. They don't know why it was excellent, or they don't know why it was poorly done. There's a description that is given for each based on the scale that is selected. All right, now I can maximize this screen. However, I'm a little bit scared to do it because I remember in a previous training when I maximized the screen, I couldn't get it back down. But I'm going to click on it, just taking a risk to click on this option. If I click on this option, it maximizes the screen for me. Okay, so it no longer maximizes the screen. It actually just shows the rubric, right? It shows the live rubric, the rubric that I'm using. All right, so what I wanted was for this screen to come out a little bit bigger. Yeah, but it doesn't allow me, just for you to see better. Okay. All right, so if I know, so the student has gotten 22 out of 30, as you can see here, right? So 22 out of 30 is about 73, 74 thereabouts. So if I apply the 70 to 22 out of 30 to grade, you would see here that the student has gotten 73 out of 100. All right, and if I wanted to use this same rubric now to grade my other students' work, it is simple. I would simply click on the drop down here and it would show me the other students' assignments and their names. However, For the purpose of this training session, I only uploaded one assignment from the dummy student. So this is the only reason why we're seeing one student here. Typically, you would have multiple students and you'd be able to use the back and forth arrows to switch through previous and next assignment. All right, do we have any questions related to what we're doing thus far? All right, just quickly going through the chat with my eyes. All right, okay. All right, Mrs. Freeman Prince, you can take the mic.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Becca. Just a quick question. I noticed while you were doing the rubric for the one with 5 and even for the one with 10, I noticed I stopped at 2. What if the student gets below? Is it just assuming that anything below that is unsatisfactory? Everything would be unsatisfactory below that? Because I noticed it stopped at 2. And the same thing for oral communication, you stopped it at 7, and organization, you stopped it at 5.
Right. So unsatisfactory based on the scales I have entered is the lowest that the student can get. But remember, when you're doing it, you can put it as far as poor. So if you want to add another one and put it to poor, you can.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
You're welcome. So just remember that whatever it is that you have put in your rubric, that is what is used to create the scales, to create rather the sliders and whatever options the students have. All right. So anything that you put, that is the outcome that you receive here. All right, so let's say now you have your rubric created. Let's say we didn't create this on spot, but you have your rubric and you actually, or let's say rather a more real situation. Let's say we just created the rubric, but tomorrow we come back on and we want to actually use the same rubric to grade the students' work, or to continue rather grading other students' work. To find the rubrics, I'm going to close this out and show us from scratch how we find the rubric. All right, so to find the rubric, and this is loading, right? So because we gave the student a grade already, it is showing now 73 out of 100. All right, so let's say we want to assess another student's work. We will click on the assessment, on the submission title rather, or we can click on the amount of similarity detected, and we would click to launch the rubric manager by clicking here. All right, and we would click top right on the gear option, manage rubrics. Click top left on the 3 lines, that's the menu option, and we would click on the rubric library. The rubric library would show us all the rubrics we have created. All right, so when you scroll through, it shows you all the rubrics you have created, as well as rubrics that exist that TurnItIn has created. All right, so you find a rubric, you click on it, you attach it to the assignment, and you keep on going. Now, let us say you have your own rubric on your computer and you prefer to upload it. TurnItIn actually only accepts a particular format. And I had mentioned earlier that the format has to be a CSV file or Excel file. All right, so I'm going to show you now, if I wanted to create a new rubric, rather upload a rubric, I would click on the upload rubric option. And here it says I can browse or drag and drop my file. However, the accepted file types are RBC, XLS, XLSX. All right, and it says that the file requirements for these file formats are that the criteria titles must be 13 characters or less. There's a limit of 20 scale columns and 50 criteria rows, and the scoring can be included once the rubric is imported. What I like about this is that they actually provide a rubric sample. So if I click to download a rubric example here and I open it, I can just copy and paste my rubric contents into these fields. All right. For me, it's time consuming. I just prefer to either create the rubric on spot, or if I already have the rubric, to just copy and paste. As per my demonstration just now, if you prefer to use this option, you can, but just remember you will not be able to upload a regular Word document or PDF document with your rubric and for it to be appended to the student's assignment for you to use it. That's not possible. All right, so the 2 options are, you can either copy and paste the details of your rubric here following the format that is shown, or you can create it on spot as I've just demonstrated. All right. Okay. So I'm going to close this now. Let's quickly look at the grade form. So I had mentioned earlier, the grade form is much simpler, much more basic, and it's free form, and you'll see why. So I'm going to click on the gear icon, click on the option to create a new grading form. So we just looked at rubric, so grading form is second option, and I'm gonna just use the same thing that we just used, the same rubric here. So we had introduction, organization, and oral communication. All right, so these are the criteria. And it allows you now to enter a description for each. All right, so it's totally different. So introduction. So I would probably say for the introduction, would allude to the first part of the assignment. For the organization, will probably allude to how the paragraphs are organized. And for oral communication, you know, that is basically it. You can add criteria, additional criteria if you want, because the button is there, it shows you. So if you want to add additional criteria, you can. But that's basically it. So I'm just going to enter a description here. Let's just say introduction description. All right, organization description. So this, I don't know about the grade form being used by anybody, but I'm just showing you if you want a simpler option or an easier way out for assessing your students' work. I don't know how, because it's not detailed, I don't think it's fitting, but because it's an option that exists, I've decided to still, you know, demonstrate it. All right, you can insert scores as well. So let's look at that. So I have the grading form created. I haven't given it a name. Let's give it a name. So I'm going to call this live demo grading form. Remember, you have to give it a name before you can save it. And then I'm going to click on save. All right. And then attach to assignment. Not sure if I can attach it to this assignment because I've already graded the students' work, but let's see. All right, so there's already a rubric attached. Attached to another rubric will delete any existing rubric scoring for this assignment. So I'm going to confirm to continue, and I'm going to close. So now this is what the grading form looks like. All right, so I can manually enter the grade. If their introduction is good, I could give them, and remember that we want it out of 100 since we didn't specify the points. We weren't able to specify the points for the grading form. All right, so let's say for introduction, the student, let's say I'm marking the introduction out of 20, right? Could give them 18. Let's say the organization is being marked out of 40. I could give them a 30. And remember, you can add your comments. All right, so we can say, well done, introduction, and you expound. Why is it well done? All right, organization, comments, we leave the comments here. All right, and then let's say for the oral communication, marking that out of 42. Let's say we're giving them 20 out of 40. Right, so that would be 68 out of 100, and if I apply it to the grade, it comes up as 68 out of 100 there. All right, so the grading form, it is what it is. It is free form, I said before, because you can enter your comments, you can enter your score as you go along, and it's not as detailed as the rubric. All right, so that's basically it for the for today's session, but I want us to look at the TurnItIn module before we go. If we don't have any questions, do we have any questions, any additional questions? All right, thanks, Dr. Barrow, Dr. White Barrow, for clarifying your comment. All right, okay. No questions? No additional questions?
Well, I don't have any questions at this time, but I'm sure when I'm working on TurnItIn, I'm going to be calling.
Okay.
Because it's far different to be actually manipulating the system than to be sitting in the class.
Right. All right. And it's not, I mean, it's not anything that's hard. I mean, once you start doing it, you're doing it repeatedly, you get the full hang of it. Right? It's nothing hard at all. It's just about remembering the different steps that you need to take. All right. And the recording will be provided as well. So you can, at a self-paced, way, look at it, stop it, rewind it, fast forward if needs be when you are reviewing it. All right. So Test TurnItIn. Test TurnItIn, I explained earlier, is a TurnItIn module that we have in UTech Online that you and your students can use to check your assignments, your papers. So to access it, it's just as though you're searching for a course. You would go to, so it is in my courses because I'm a teacher on the module, but for you to search for it, you'd use the site home option, which can be found in the administration panel to your left. So site home, scroll down, and we're going to see a search bar. We are going to enter TurnItIn as one word, no spaces, TurnItIn. And it produces one result. So we're going to click on it. You don't need an enrollment key to access it, by the way. So it won't prompt you to enter an enrollment key. You just access it, and same for your students. All right, so this is what the TurnItIn module looks like. And it's very important to read what is there. It says that you can upload to each part of an assignment only once. So there are 7 different assignment slots. All right, but 5 parts to each slot. So each person can upload up to 35 times. If you have maxed out uploading your papers over the 35 times, because they can't go over that. Right, if you have done 35 submissions to the Dropbox and you need to use it, again, you can just write to us and we'll go in and remove your submissions, so it's free and empty again for you. All right, but you just read through. We have instructions on how to upload and test your paper using the TurnItIn module, how to view the similarity report that TurnItIn has generated. There's an APA manual to guide you. We have the basics of the APA. We also have a citation machine called Cite This For Me, and it gives information on the changes between the APA 6th edition and the APA 7th edition. Right? And below these are the test slots or the test drop boxes. All right, so you just click on it. And you will get a little upload button. My screen is still loading. So it's like an arrow. You would click on it. And so this is the little arrow I'm referring to. You just click on it to submit paper. So you're seeing other students here now because I'm in as a teacher. But if you're using it, you would be in as a student. All right. But I can submit a paper on a student's behalf because of the role I have in it. But you would see a button to upload your paper, and it's straightforward from there because you just enter the name of the paper, you search for the paper on your computer, and you add submission, and you just wait for TurnItIn to generate the report. All right, so remember the name of the module is TurnItIn or Test TurnItIn, and you search for it by using the Cite Home option. All right, Mrs. Headley Smith, can take the mic.
Yes, I was checking. Does it matter if the student's submission is done in Word or PDF?
No, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Why it doesn't matter is because both are text-based. It contains text-based content. So if it's a PowerPoint document, TurnItIn would still be able to read it, but it does not, it's not able to check for similarity among pictures.
Thank you.
All right, no problem. All right, so I am going to leave my extension and my email address. If you are having any issues, you can always call me by my extension, available Mondays to Fridays, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And you can also email me. You can also email me. I'm very responsive. I mean, we do get a lot of emails, but I try as best as possible to respond to emails in a responsive manner. And if you call me as well, you'll get me from the Avaya phone. All right. If we have no further questions, I want to thank everyone for attending today's training session. I trust that it was beneficial, trust it was useful, trust you have learned something. I note all the email addresses being left. If you came late, you can leave your email address in the chat for a recording of today's session to be sent to you. All right. And also, if you did not attend last week's session, which was part 1 of the TurnItIn. So it's like I wouldn't really say a series, just part 1 and part 2. What we looked at last week was setting up the TurnItIn assignment. We looked at using the feedback studio. We looked at interpreting the similarity report. And today we primarily zoomed in on the rubric, how to create the rubric, how to upload a rubric, and the grade 4. All right, so my extension, I just placed it in the chat, 3136. All right, so thanks again to everyone for attending and enjoy the rest of your week. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Yeah.